My name is Kate Mercer, and I am 38 years old. Last Thursday, my father slid a statement across a folding table at the Maple Glen Community Hall, asked me to read it into a microphone, and called it his apology. The first line said I had mishandled a well sample and falsely blamed our family farm for contaminated water, but I had not collected that sample. My father knew it. In my canvas bag was the lab report showing the water was unsafe, along with an email proving I had warned him before he spread manure on the field above that well. Across the room, my neighbor Maya Bennett held her baby against her shoulder after 6 weeks of washing bottles with water carried in blue plastic jugs. My brother Luke sat beside our father with both hands locked around his knees, while the county conservation officer waited near the wall. Dad tapped the statement with one finger. "People trust you, Katie. Read it clean, then we can put this behind us." Before I answer, consider this. How far would you go to protect a family business after the family asked you to carry the blame? I looked at the microphone, then at the red warning printed across the lab report in my bag. My father thought the choice was between him and the farm. He still did not understand that the choice had been made the night he gambled with someone else's drinking water. I grew up on Mercer Ridge Dairy, outside a small Wisconsin town where people could identify a farm by the shape of its silo. Ours was the white one with a rusted cap and a maple tree growing too close to the milk house, and it had belonged to a Mercer for 4 generations. My father, Wade Mercer, woke at 4 every morning without an alarm and could hear a bad bearing through a closed tractor cab. He knew which cow would kick, which gate would sag after a thaw, and which field held water after 3 days of rain. He was not a soft man, but he was dependable, and when a neighbor's barn burned, Dad arrived before the fire trucks with a trailer and room for 20 cows. When my 5th grade class toured the farm, he scrubbed the parlor floor until it looked cleaner than our kitchen. My mother, June, handled the books and made the farm feel less like a machine. She kept peppermint candy in the glove box and wrote every birthday on the calendar by the refrigerator. She also knew how to stop my father with one look when his certainty became cruelty. Luke was 4 years younger than me and loved engines, calves, and any job that ended with mud on his boots. I loved the spring that ran behind our north pasture. I tested it with school kits, drew maps of where puddles formed, and asked why one ditch stayed clear while another turned brown. Dad called me his water girl, and at county fair dinners, he would rest a hand on my shoulder and tell people I was going to college to learn what the ground was hiding. Back then, his pride felt like sunlight, though I did not notice it only stayed warm while my knowledge agreed with him. The year I left for college, milk prices were low, and our roof leaked over the calf pens, so Dad sold a restored tractor he had planned to keep forever, and that sale covered what my scholarship did not. I carried the guilt of that tractor through every exam. I earned a geology degree, then a Master.S focused on groundwater. By the time I was 30, I was licensed as a professional geologist and working for an environmental consulting firm in Madison. Most of my projects involved wells, old industrial sites, and farms where water moved in ways nobody could see. Dad bragged about me then and clipped an article from my firm's newsletter to tape inside the farm office. "Our scientist," he told customers, "she can read dirt like a book." That sentence mattered more to me than I admitted. I had built a life away from Mercer Ridge, but some part of me still stood in the milk house waiting for my father to say I had done well. Mom died when I was 33. A stroke took her in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, and after the funeral, Dad stopped coming to Madison. He worked longer hours, spoke in shorter sentences, and treated every change as if it were another thing trying to leave him. Luke moved into the farmhouse with his wife for a while, then bought a small place 2 miles away. He became the farm's day-to-day operator, although Dad still made every decision that involved money, land, or pride. I visited twice a month, bringing groceries, fixing the farm computer, and reviewing whatever paper Dad pushed toward me. He never asked for formal advice. He would say, "Just look at this as my daughter," which meant he wanted professional reassurance without professional limits. For several years, the arrangement seemed harmless. I corrected a well map. I explained a lab result. I suggested where not to dig. Every time I helped, Dad told me the farm would be mine and Luke someday. I did not want the farm, but I wanted him to trust me before something went wrong. The spring everything changed was the wettest I could remember. Snow melted late, then rain came in heavy bands. The lower fields shone like dull mirrors, and tractors left ruts deep enough to hold a boot. Mercer Ridge had grown to 240 cows, more than our old manure storage could comfortably handle during a long, wet stretch. Dad had planned an expansion, but concrete costs rose and the bank delayed the second part of his loan. Luke called me one evening in March with a pump running behind him. "The pit is getting high," he said. "Dad wants to spread on the East 40 tomorrow." The East 40 sloped toward the Bennett property and had thin soil over fractured rock in several places. Water could move quickly there, especially after rain, and the farm's own nutrient plan marked part of that field as sensitive. I checked the short-term runoff forecast, which showed more rain and a high risk. "Don't use that field," I said. "Not now. Hire trucks, move some to another storage site, or call the county and ask about emergency options." Luke exhaled. "You know what hauling costs." "I know what a contaminated well costs." Dad took the phone from him. "The forecast has been wrong all month." "It only has to be right once. We have storage for maybe 2 days. Then call the county tonight." He went quiet. Dad disliked asking for help almost as much as he disliked paying for it. "You consultants always have an expensive answer," he said. "This one is cheaper than a cleanup." He ended the call without saying goodbye. The next morning, I sent an email to both Dad and Luke and kept it plain. "Do not apply on the East 40 before the predicted rain. The field has a direct drainage path toward the Bennett well area. Use temporary storage or request emergency assistance." I added a map with the sensitive section outlined, but I was not working for the farm, and I wrote that clearly. This was family advice based on information they had sent me, while a formal review would require current soil records and an on-site visit. Luke replied with 2 words, "Got it." Dad did not reply. For the next week, I heard nothing. I told myself that meant they had found another option, and I wanted that to be true, so I did not call again. That was my first mistake. The second came a month later, when Dad asked me to come for Sunday lunch. The fields had dried enough for planting. He grilled burgers behind the farmhouse and acted almost cheerful. After we ate, he handed me a folded field map with the East 40 shaded in yellow pencil. "We used a little there," he said, "before that last rain." My stomach tightened. How much is a little? "Enough to make room." "When?" He named the night after my warning. Luke stared at his plate. I unfolded the map. "Did anything run off?" "No." "Did anyone check the ditch during the storm?" Dad gave me the look he used when a conversation had become inconvenient. The rain was not as bad here. There were dried brown streaks along the lane when I drove home. They could have been soil. They could have been manure. I slowed near the Bennett property, but I did not stop. I told myself there was no evidence of a problem and that I was refusing to turn a family disagreement into an investigation. Mostly, I told myself Dad had sold a tractor for my education, and I owed him the dignity of not assuming the worst. 3 weeks later, Maya Bennett called me at 7 in the morning. Maya and I had ridden the same school bus, and although we were never close friends, our families had shared fences, storms, and borrowed equipment for years. She had moved back into her parents' house after her divorce and was raising her 6-month-old daughter, Rose, there. "Kate, the water smells wrong," she said. I sat up in bed. What kind of wrong? Like wet soil and a barn. It was cloudy last night. This morning it cleared, but the smell is still there. Have you used it for Rose's bottles? Yesterday. My feet hit the floor. Stop using it now. Don't cook with it. Don't give it to the baby. Use bottled water until it is tested. Her breathing changed. Is this from your farm? I don't know yet. That answer was true, but it was also the last simple truth I would have for weeks. Maya had already called a certified laboratory in Madison, with a courier scheduled to collect samples that afternoon. I told her that was the right step. Then I drove to Maple Glen. The Bennett well sat downhill from the East 40, behind a small white house with green shutters, where Maya met me holding Rose on one hip. 3 cases of bottled water were stacked by the door. She handed me a glass jar filled from the kitchen tap, and the water looked clear. The smell was faint, but it was there. We walked to the drainage ditch, where flattened grass showed that water had moved hard after the storm. A dark line clung to the stems and pointed uphill toward the East 40. That was not there before April, Maya said. I crouched but did not touch anything. I was not there as an investigator because I lacked permission from my firm and had a personal conflict that could not have been more obvious. I need to stay out of the official sampling, I said. Let the lab handle the well. Call the county health department and conservation office today. Maya looked toward the ridge. Have you called your dad? Not yet. Will you? Yes. She shifted Rose against her shoulder. Please do not make me fight your whole family just to know if my water is safe. I promised her I would not. Then I drove up the hill and broke that promise in a quieter way. Dad was in the machine shed replacing teeth on a cultivator, while Luke stood at the workbench sorting bolts into coffee cans. Maya's well smells like manure, I said. A certified lab is sampling today. Dad did not look up. Their septic tank is older than you. The ditch shows runoff from the ridge. It shows rain. You spread on the East 40 after I warned you. His wrench stopped. Luke kept sorting bolts but more slowly. Dad turned toward me. Careful. That one word took me back to being 14 and arguing about a calf with a swollen leg. Careful meant I was crossing from daughter into disloyalty. I am being careful, I said. That is why you need to stop using the field, notify the county, and offer temporary water. You don't know the source. No, that is why it needs an investigation. He wiped his hands on a rag. And while they investigate what happens, inspectors crawl over every acre. The milk buyer hears rumors. The bank calls the loan. People see one bad headline and decide we poison babies. Maya has a baby. His face tightened. For 1 second, I thought that fact had reached him. Then he looked toward Luke. Get them bottled water, he said, quietly. That is not enough. It is enough until the lab comes back. I should have called the county from the shed, but instead, I accepted a deadline. 24 hours, I said. If the result is unsafe, we report it immediately. Dad nodded once. Luke loaded water into his truck, and I watched him drive downhill with relief that looked, in retrospect, a lot like cowardice. The report arrived the next afternoon. Maya forwarded it before she called, and the page had a red warning across the top. Unsafe for drinking. Nitrate measured nearly twice the drinking water limit, and fecal bacteria were present. I read the result 3 times. Nitrate alone could come from several sources. Bacteria could also have more than one cause. Together, after runoff from a recently spread field, they demanded action. Maya's voice shook when she called. Rose seems fine. Her doctor said to keep using bottled water and watch her. What do I do now? Send the report to the county health department. I will call the conservation office. You said your dad would report it. He should have. I am not waiting. I called Dad first anyway. That was my 3rd mistake. He answered from the tractor. The report is unsafe, I said. High nitrate and bacteria, I'm calling the county. No. It is not optional. You promised me a day. The day is over. He lowered his voice. Kate, listen to me. A single sample proves nothing. Wells get bad samples all the time. The lab followed chain of custody. You were at the house. I did not collect it. You told her what to test. That does not contaminate a bottle. He was silent long enough that I heard the tractor idle. Give me until Monday, he said. I will have our well tested. If there is a real problem, we handle it. It was Friday, and waiting through the weekend would give him time to prepare while leaving other nearby wells untested. I knew that. I can't do that. You can, you just don't want to. What does that mean? It means you have spent years telling me this farm is behind. Maybe part of you wants to be proven right. The accusation landed because it touched an old wound, since Dad had never forgiven me for saying the farm's storage and field plan needed updating. I had never forgiven him for acting as if concern were contempt. I want the water safe, I said. And I want the farm alive. They are not opposite goals. They will be when the state gets involved. He ended the call. I reported the result to Erin Shaw, a Greene County conservation specialist who had worked with farms for almost 20 years. She did not sound shocked, dramatic, or eager to punish anyone. She asked for the lab report, the well location, recent weather, and what I knew about nearby manure applications. I disclosed that Mercer Ridge belonged to my family and that I had sent an informal warning before the application. Did the farm retain you professionally? She asked. No. Did you approve the spreading? No. Did you know they spread before today? I closed my eyes. Yes, I learned about it several weeks ago. Did you report it then? No, I had no evidence of an impact. That was defensible. It was not the whole emotional truth. Erin paused. Because of the family relationship, I need you to step back from the investigation. I understand. We will arrange repeat testing and inspect the runoff path. Maya should keep using alternative water. After the call, I sat in my car outside a grocery store and watched people load bags into their trunks while the world looked offensively normal. I had done the correct thing, but late, while Dad had made the dangerous choice and received privacy he had not earned. The difference mattered. That evening, Luke came to my Madison apartment with manure on his boots and fear in his face. Dad knows you called, he said. He knew I would. He says the county will shut us down. They are not going to shut down a farm because someone reported a well result. They will investigate and require changes if needed. You know how rumors work. I know how groundwater works. He flinched. I had made my profession sound like a weapon. I softened my voice. Luke, who spread on the East 40. He looked at the floor. You did, I said. Dad told me to. Did you see runoff? After the rain, there was water in the ditch. What color? Brown. Did it smell? He rubbed both hands over his face. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because every answer costs money we do not have. That was the farm's real language, not right or wrong, affordable or impossible. Luke sat at my kitchen table and told me the storage pit had been within inches of the emergency mark. The contractor who usually hauled overflow wanted payment up front. Dad had a loan renewal due in summer and could not show another large expense. He said the field would hold it, Luke whispered. He said one storm would not move that much. Did you believe him? I needed to. I understood that answer too well. Luke promised to cooperate with Erin. Before he left, I asked whether he still had the application log. He nodded. Do not change it, I said. His eyes came up fast. Why would you say that? Because Dad is scared. So am I. I know. The next morning, the log changed. Aaron called me just before noon. Mercer Ridge had submitted its application records, and according to Dad's copy, manure had gone onto the west pasture, not the east 40. That is not what Luke told me, I said. It is also not what your email warned about, Aaron replied. Do you have anything besides the email? I had the yellow-shaded map Dad handed me at lunch, which showed the east 40 but did not record a date or amount. I had brought it home without thinking and left it under a stack of mail. I have a field map he marked after the application, I said. Send a scan, do not alter or write on it. The moment I hung up, Dad called. You gave them our private records. I gave them my email and Maya's report. That map belongs to the farm. You handed it to me. As my daughter. The phrase had finally become what it always was. A door he could open when he wanted my expertise and close when he feared its consequences. The county log says west pasture, I said. Luke told me east 40. Luke is confused. He spread it. Your brother is tired. You put ideas in his head. I heard paper moving on his end. What are you doing? I asked. Fixing a mess you started. You changed the log. I corrected it. Dad, a record is not wrong because the truth is expensive. His voice hardened. Do not talk to me like I am one of your clients. A client would have listened before the rain. He hung up. 2 days later, the county collected new samples from the Bennett well and several nearby wells, while Aaron walked the ditch with a soil technician. I stayed away, exactly as she had asked. Maya sent me a photo of the technician in orange boots below the east 40, with Rose sitting behind him in a stroller beneath a blanket. The blue water jugs were stacked by the porch. That image hurt more than the lab numbers, because numbers can feel abstract. A mother measuring water from a jug into a baby bottle cannot. The repeat sample confirmed the first result. The water was still unsafe. A second home farther down the road had elevated nitrate but no bacteria, while the farm's milk house well tested below the limit. Dad seized on that last result as proof. If our well is clean, the farm did not do it, he told anyone who would listen. That was not how groundwater worked, because wells at different depths could pull from different fractures. One clean well did not erase 2 unsafe ones downhill. Still, his explanation was simple, and simple explanations travel fast. The Maple Glen Gazette published a short article with the headline Family Farm Disputes Daughter's Water Claim. I was not interviewed, Dad was. He told the reporter I had taken an informal sample without permission, failed to follow proper procedure, and drawn conclusions outside an official investigation. He said grief after my mother's death had created tension between me and the farm. I read that last sentence 4 times. Dad had turned Mom into evidence against me. My employer called me into a conference room on Monday. My supervisor, Nathan Ross, had the article beside a copy of Dad's complaint, filed through our firm's website with my March memo attached. He says you advised the farm, then reported it when they did not hire your company, Nathan said. That is false. Did you advise them? As a daughter, informally, the email says it was not a professional review. Did you know they spread before the well complaint? Yes. Nathan leaned back. Why did you not disclose that immediately to us? Because I was not working on a firm project. You are a licensed professional. The public will not separate Kate the daughter from Kate the geologist when your name appears in a contamination story. I wanted to argue. Instead, I looked at the memo and saw exactly how Dad was using it. I had given him a warning with enough technical language to make me look involved, but without a contract defining my role. I should have told the firm as soon as Maya called, I said. Yes. I also should have stepped away before going to her property. Yes. Nathan's honesty felt brutal but clean, and he did not accuse me of causing the contamination. He accused me of letting family blur a boundary I expected everyone else to respect. The firm placed me on temporary leave from groundwater fieldwork while it reviewed the complaint, though I could still do internal analysis. I could not sign reports. When I left the conference room, my professional stamp was locked in Nathan's desk. I sat in my car with both hands on the wheel, remembering that Dad always said the farm was our name. That morning, he used the farm to put my name at risk. Maya called while I was still in the parking lot. "I saw the article," she said. "I am sorry." "You did not write it. Your dad came by yesterday." My grip tightened. Why? He offered to pay for bottled water if I signed a letter, saying the first sample might have been mishandled. "Did you sign?" "No." "What did he say?" "That the farm has supported this road for decades. That one misunderstanding should not ruin everybody." Everybody. In Dad's math, the farm was everybody, and the people carrying water into their homes were a rounding error. Maya was quiet. "Are you in trouble at work?" "For the way I handled the conflict, maybe, not for the result." "Your father told me you could lose your license." "He wants that possibility to scare both of us." "Does it?" "Yes." I could hear Rose fussing in the background. Then Maya said, "Good, be scared, just do not disappear." That sentence became a rail I held for the next 2 weeks. I disclosed everything to my firm's review council, the family calls, the lunch where Dad admitted spreading, the 24-hour delay, the yellow map, my report to Aaron. I did not trim my mistakes to make Dad's look larger. The council asked one question that stayed with me. "If this had been any other farm, what would you have done?" I would have reported the well result first and called the owner second. "Why did you reverse that order?" "Because he is my father." That explains it. It does not excuse it. I know. For most of my life, I had thought loyalty meant giving family one more chance than I would give anyone else. I was beginning to understand that extra chances become hidden costs, and somebody always pays them. In this case, Maya paid in water jugs. My firm paid in doubt. Luke paid in silence. I paid with the professional judgment I had spent 15 years building. Dad still believed he was the only one protecting anything. If you have ever watched a family call your boundary betrayal, tell me where you think loyalty ends. Is it when someone lies, when someone risks your work, or when someone asks another person to live with the damage? The county's investigation moved slowly. Rain records, the runoff path, field conditions, and repeated well samples all pointed toward the Eastfield application, but Dad treated every careful word as an escape hatch. When Aaron called it the most likely agricultural contributor, he told the Gazette that likely meant uncertain. Aaron scheduled a meeting at the farm office. She asked Dad to preserve original spreading records, stop applying on the East 40, and provide temporary water to affected homes while the review continued. Dad agreed to the water. He fought everything else. "This is my ground," he said. "It is also above their groundwater," Aaron replied. I was not at that meeting. Luke told me about it afterward from the parking lot of a feed store. "He says you turned her against us," he said. "I have spoken to Aaron twice. He says she repeats your language." Because runoff and groundwater are not family vocabulary, they are facts. Luke sounded exhausted. "Dad wants me to sign the corrected log." "Do not sign something false." "He says the dates were entered wrong." "Were they?" "No." There it was, a simple answer at last. "Take a photo of the original," I said. "Send it to Aaron." Luke did not respond. "Luke, if I do that, he will cut me out." "Out of what?" "The farm." The question had sounded careless, and I regretted it immediately because Luke had built his whole adult life around Mercer Ridge. His house loan, his work, his daughter's school, and every plan he had depended on the promise that he would own part of the farm someday. Dad had given me education. He had given Luke expectation. Both gifts came with strings we had mistaken for roots. "I am sorry," I said. "That is not a small thing." "No, it is not. But signing a false record will not make the truth smaller." He ended the call without choosing. 3 days later, I received a padded envelope at work. There was no return address. Inside was a small black thumb drive and a note in Luke's handwriting. "I cannot say this out loud yet. The original log is here. So are the tractor messages." The application log showed the East 40, the correct date, and Luke's initials. The tractor messages were short. Dad had sent them through the farm's equipment system because cell service was weak in the lower fields. "Spread east tonight." Luke had replied, "Kate says wait." Dad answered, "Kate does not run this farm. We need room before rain." The final message came after midnight. "Finish the north strip too." I stared at those lines until the screen dimmed. The evidence did not prove every part of the contamination by itself. It proved something morally central. Dad had been warned. He understood the rain risk. He chose the field anyway. Then he changed the record. I copied the files to a secure drive and sent the originals to Aaron and my firm's counsel. I told both of them Luke had provided the material and feared retaliation. An hour later, Luke called. "You sent it. You gave it to me. I thought you would use it to make Dad tell the truth." "I did. The truth does not become safer because we keep it in the kitchen." "You could have warned me. You could have asked me to hold it." He swore under his breath. "You knew what I meant." That was my next mistake. I had acted correctly with the records, but I had not treated Luke like a person standing under the same collapsing roof. I had turned his fear into a procedural step. "I should have called," I said. "It is too late." "What happened?" Dad saw Aaron's request for the original log. He knows. "Are you safe?" "He did not hit me, Kate." That was not my question. Luke's voice cracked. He told me to turn in my keys. I drove to Maple Glen before I had permission from work or a plan in my head. Luke was sitting in his truck outside the farm lane. A cardboard box held his gloves, thermos, and the framed photo of our parents that had stood on his desk. Dad had changed the code on the equipment shed. "He fired me," Luke said. "I'm sorry. You always get to leave." The words were not fair, but they were not entirely wrong. "You got the degree," he continued. "You got Madison. You get to be the brave one because your paycheck does not come from him. My paycheck is under review because of him. And you still have one." I sat on the tailgate beside him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Luke said, "I spread it." "Dad ordered it." "I drove the tractor." "You also saved the record." After I lied for weeks. We were both searching for a version of responsibility that hurt less. There was not one. "You need your own lawyer," I said. "Not Dad's, not mine." "I cannot afford that." "I will pay for one consultation." He shook his head. "It will not buy your silence," I said. "It will help you understand what you are signing." He finally nodded. Dad watched us from the office window. He did not come outside. That night, he left me a voicemail. "You stole your brother from his home. You handed private farm data to people who want us gone. Your mother would not recognize you." I saved the message, not as evidence, but because grief can make a cruel sentence feel sacred if it uses the right dead person. The next morning, I deleted it. Mom had believed in clean counters, paid bills, and telling the truth before supper. Dad did not get to wear her voice like a coat. The county issued an interim order. Mercer Ridge had to stop spreading on the East 40, fund bottled water, allow additional testing, and submit a corrective storage plan. The farm could keep operating. Dad told everyone the order was proof that regulators wanted to bankrupt small farmers. In private, he called the bank. The bank did not call the loan. It required updated cost estimates and proof that the farm could comply. The milk buyer did not cancel the contract, but it asked for the county documents and a written plan. The disaster Dad had predicted did not arrive. A different one did. Because he had changed the log and blamed me publicly, his credibility collapsed. Every ordinary question now sounded like an accusation. Every neighbor who had once trusted his handshake asked for paper. That was the cost he could not calculate. My firm finished its first review at the end of June. Nathan returned my professional stamp in the same conference room where he had taken it. "We found no evidence that you collected, altered, or misrepresented the Bennett sample," he said. "Your father's complaint on that point is unsupported." I let out a breath I had been holding for 3 weeks. Nathan was not finished. "You exercised poor judgment by giving technical advice to a family operation without a defined role. You also waited too long to disclose the conflict to us." "I agree. You will stay off Mercer Ridge work permanently. You will complete an ethics review, and another geologist will check your next 2 reports." "That is fair." He studied me. "Do you think it is?" "I think consequences can be fair even when the accusation that started them was not." For the first time that morning, he smiled. I returned to fieldwork on projects far from Maple Glen. I stood beside monitoring wells at an old paper mill and explained groundwater flow to people who did not know my father. The ordinary work felt like a privilege. Still, every time I saw a red lab warning, I thought of Maya's kitchen. The Bennett family had been using bottled water for more than a month. Rose was healthy, but Maya had stopped trusting every faucet in the house. She washed vegetables with jug water. She brushed her teeth with it. She checked the baby's skin after each bath, even though the doctor had told her bathing was not the main concern. Fear had entered the house through the tap, and no county order could remove it quickly. I visited one Saturday with groceries and a new bottle rack. Maya let me in, but she did not make the visit easy. "Your dad sent a check," she said. "That is good." It has a note in the memo line: "Temporary assistance without admission." I closed my eyes. Of course it does. I deposited it. "You should. I thought you might judge me. For taking money to buy the water you need. For taking anything from him. Maya, this is not a purity contest. He owes you water." She leaned against the counter. "Do you know what I hate most? I keep remembering your mother bringing soup when my dad broke his hip. I remember your father plowing our driveway. Then I look at those jugs and wonder which memory is the lie." "Neither." "That would be easier." I understood. A cruel stranger is simple. A person who once helped you can make you question whether present harm counts. Before I left, Maya handed me the original lab report in a clear sleeve. She had printed another copy for herself. "You should keep this," she said. "Why?" "Because he is telling people you invented it." I looked at the red warning across the top. "This belongs with your records." "It belongs with the person he tried to blame." I put it in my canvas bag. That was the same bag I carried into the community hall weeks later. In July, Erin completed the county's source review. Her report used careful language. The Eastfield application was the most likely agricultural contributor to the Bennett well problem based on timing, drainage, field conditions, and the farm records. The report did not say Mercer Ridge was the only possible source of every contaminant. It did not claim perfect certainty. It did say the farm had ignored a known runoff risk and submitted an inaccurate application log. Dad appealed the findings. Then the Gazette obtained the tractor messages through a records request. The new headline was shorter. Farm warned before contamination. People who had defended Dad went quiet. People who hated him became louder. Neither response helped Maya turn on her tap. The milk buyer scheduled a community meeting to protect its own reputation. County staff would explain the corrective plan. Dad would be allowed to address the neighbors. He called me the day the meeting was announced. "We need an apology," he said. The word surprised me. "Yes," I replied, "you do. Not one of those lawyer things. A real one would be better. You are good with words. I am not writing it for you. Just help me get the science right." I almost laughed. After months of calling my science dishonest, he wanted it back because his own words no longer carried weight. "What do you plan to admit?" I asked. "That mistakes were made." "By whom?" A long silence. "The farm," he said. "A farm cannot make a decision. People do." "You want me to stand there and say I poisoned a baby?" "I want you to say you spread on a risky field after a warning, changed the log, and blamed me for a sample I did not collect." That sounds like a confession. It is also the truth. His breath came hard through the phone. "If I say all that, Mercer Ridge is finished. The farm is still operating. The corrective plan is funded. Luke is willing to return if you share control." So that is the deal. Humiliate me, give your brother the farm, and call it clean water. No, the deal is that you stop making everyone else pay for your fear. He hung up. 2 days later, he came to my apartment. Dad had not been inside my apartment since the week I moved there. He stood in the doorway holding his cap with both hands, smaller than he looked on the farm. I let him in. He did not sit. His eyes moved over the bookshelves, the framed map above my desk, and the pair of muddy field boots by the balcony door. It seemed to surprise him that my work had a life when it was not serving Mercer Ridge. "I was wrong about the sample," he said. It was the first direct admission he had made. "Say that to Maya." "I will." "And the log." His jaw moved. I should not have changed it. "Say that too." He looked toward the window. The storage was full. The bank had already delayed the loan. If we hired emergency hauling, I could not make payroll. If the pit overflowed, we had a bigger problem. I chose the field. "After I warned you." "Yes." The word barely cleared his throat. "Why blame me?" I asked. "Because people listen to you." That is not an answer. Because I thought if they doubted the first sample, I would have time. Time for what? To fix the pump, move the manure, test our well, find some reason it was not us. And when the repeat sample was unsafe. He gripped the cap harder. By then, I had said too much. That was the most honest thing he told me all year. His first lie had been a shield. Every lie after it was built to protect the shield. Dad finally sat at my kitchen table. He looked exhausted. "When your mother got sick, the farm kept moving," he said. "Cows still needed milking. Bills still came. I learned that if you stop, even for grief, the whole thing can take you under. Mom died from a stroke. She was not sick for months." "You know what I mean." I did. He had turned survival into a reflex so strong that admitting harm felt like lying down in front of a machine. "The farm is not Mom," I said. "It is everything we built. It is also land uphill from other people's wells." He looked at me then, angry and wounded. "You always make it sound simple." "No, I make the next right step sound clear. That is different." He asked me to attend the community meeting. "I will attend," I said. "I will not defend the false log, and I will not say the source is uncertain in a way that erases the county's finding. I am asking you to stand with me. I will stand in the room. What happens after that depends on what you say." Dad nodded. Before he left, he noticed the lab report in its clear sleeve on my desk. "That paper has become the whole story," he said. "No, it is the moment the story became impossible to hide." He reached toward it, then stopped. At the door, he said, "I did sell that tractor for you." "I know. I never held it over you." "You did not have to, I held it over myself." He left without answering. For the next week, I prepared for the meeting as if it were a hearing, even though it was not. I organized the lab report, my warning email, the original field map, the tractor messages, and the firm's finding that I had not handled the sample. I also wrote a one-page statement about my own conduct. I admitted that I had let a family relationship blur my professional boundary. I admitted I should have reported the conflict to my firm sooner. I did not claim responsibility for Dad's application decision or his altered log. Erin reviewed the water facts for accuracy. She did not edit the family parts. Luke said he would attend but would not speak. He had consulted his own attorney and provided the original records directly. Dad had not rehired him. Maya planned to bring Rose. I told her she did not owe anyone her presence. "I know," she said. "That is why I am coming." On the afternoon of the meeting, the community hall smelled like coffee, floor wax, and rain-damp jackets. Folding chairs faced a low table with 3 microphones. Dad arrived in a clean work shirt. His lawyer came with him but sat in the back. Luke took a chair on the aisle. Erin stood near a display board showing the drainage path. I kept my canvas bag at my feet. 5 minutes before the meeting began, Dad placed a 2-page statement in front of me. "I changed a few things," he said. "Read this after Erin." I scanned the first paragraph. My name was at the top. The statement said my informal involvement had created confusion about sampling and farm practices. It said I regretted raising concerns before all possible sources were excluded. It said Mercer Ridge apologized for the fear caused by my premature conclusions. I looked up. "What is this?" "Our apology. This makes me the cause." It says the process was confusing. It says I mishandled the sample. Not exactly. I did not collect the sample. He leaned closer. People need one clean explanation. You admit the process got ahead of the facts. I admit the farm should have communicated better. Then the milk buyer stays, the bank relaxes, and Luke comes home. Did Luke agree to that? Dad glanced toward him but did not answer. "You promised Meyer an apology," I said. "I am trying to save what is left." "No, you are trying to save the version where you never chose the field." The room began to quiet. Erin moved toward the table. Dad tapped the paper. "People trust you, Katie. Read it clean, then we can put this behind us." That was where I began this story. The microphone light turned green. Erin opened the meeting with the county's findings. She spoke without drama. The Bennett well was unsafe. The East Field application was the most likely agricultural contributor. Mercer Ridge had agreed to temporary water, more testing, and a corrective storage plan. Dad sat straight through every sentence. His statement rested between us. When Erin finished, he turned my microphone toward me. "My daughter wants to clarify her role," he said. That was not true, but it gave me the floor. I lifted the 2 pages. The room went still enough for me to hear Rose making a soft, humming sound against Maya's shoulder. "My father asked me to read this as the family's apology," I said. "It is not his apology. It is my confession, written by someone else." Dad's chair scraped the floor. "Katie." I held up one hand. "The first paragraph says I mishandled the original sample. I did not collect that sample. A certified laboratory courier did. The chain of custody record has been verified." Maya reached into her bag and held up the receipt, but she did not need to speak. I continued. "The statement says I made premature conclusions. Here is what I actually said. The water was unsafe. Stop using it. Notify the county. Investigate the source. Every one of those steps was appropriate." Dad pulled his microphone closer. "Nobody is saying the water was fine." The paper in front of me says I caused fear by reporting it. You called the county before the farm could confirm anything. After the lab confirmed the water was unsafe. You gave me 1 day. And I should not have given you that. The admission surprised him. It also changed the room. I was not there to pretend I had handled everything perfectly. I took my own statement from the bag. I let my relationship with this farm blur my judgment. I called my father before I called the county. I waited through a private deadline because I wanted to believe he would act. I disclosed the conflict to my employer too late. Those were my mistakes. Dad looked almost relieved. Then I placed the lab report in its clear sleeve on the table. They did not contaminate Maya's well. They did not put manure on the East 40. They did not change the application log, and they did not create this red warning. Several people shifted in their chairs. Dad stared at the report as if it had insulted him. He said, the county itself cannot prove one exact source. Erin leaned toward her microphone. The report identifies the East Field application as the most likely agricultural contributor. Most likely is not certain, Dad replied. No field investigation gives you the kind of certainty you are demanding, I said. You know that. You are using careful language as if it means no evidence exists. Dad's face reddened. This is exactly why I wanted one statement. Every sentence becomes a trial. It became a trial when you accused me in the newspaper. I was protecting the farm. From the truths. From people who hear one number and want blood. Maya stood, still holding Rose. I wanted water, she said. 4 words ended the argument more cleanly than anything I had prepared. Dad looked at her. Maya, I am sorry you have been inconvenienced. The room changed. Even his lawyer closed his eyes. Maya's voice stayed level. I carried every bottle my baby drank for 6 weeks. Do not call that an inconvenience. Dad opened his mouth, but I spoke first. This is the problem. You can only see the cost when it appears on the farm side of the road. He turned on me. You think I do not know cost? I sold equipment to put you through school. I kept this place alive after your mother died. I gave Luke work. I paid families when milk prices dropped. Do not stand there and teach me sacrifice. The old guilt rose exactly where he expected it. For years, that tractor had been the quiet invoice behind every favor I did for him. I had never questioned whether a parent could give something freely and still use the memory of it as leverage. I know what you sacrificed, I said. I am grateful for my education. Gratitude does not make me responsible for your decision. It made you who you are. Yes, and who I am cannot sign this. I pushed his statement back across the table. Dad did not touch it. You walk away now, he said, and the farm may not survive. The county plan lets the farm operate. The bank is watching. Because the log was changed. The buyer is watching. Because you blamed the person who warned you. Luke is gone. Luke spoke from the aisle. I am gone because you asked me to sign a lie. Dad turned toward him. I told you the entry was wrong. You told me to change east to west. That is not what happened. Luke's hands trembled, but he stayed seated. I reached into my bag and removed the printed tractor messages. I had shown copies to the county and my firm. Dad knew they existed. Nobody in the room had heard them read. I do not need Luke to argue with you, I said. Your own messages record the decision. Dad's lawyer stood halfway, then sat when Dad waved him down. I read the first message. Spread east tonight. Then Luke's reply. Kate says wait. Then Dad's answer. Kate does not run this farm. We need room before rain. The words sounded smaller in the hall than they had on my screen. That made them worse. A disaster had grown from ordinary sentences written by a tired man who believed urgency gave him permission. Dad looked at the table. I placed my March email beside the messages. This is the warning I sent. It names the field, the predicted rain, the drainage path, and the safer options. I did not approve the spreading. I advised against it. He rubbed his forehead. The pit was almost full, he said. I know. The hauler wanted money we did not have. I know. If that pit overflowed, you would be standing here saying I ignored that risk. Yes, you had two bad options. That does not turn the option you chose into someone else's decision. For the first time, his anger cracked and the fear under it showed. What was I supposed to do? Call the county, ask for emergency help, tell the bank, pay for hauling, reduce the herd if the storage could not support it, any honest choice before a hidden one. You say that from an office in Madison. I say it as the person you called when you wanted free expertise and blamed when you ignored it. He looked at the crowd, then back at me. This family has carried that farm for more than 100 years. And Maya carried water because of what happened there. You are choosing strangers over your own father. I am choosing not to let love change the location of responsibility. He stared at me. Then he pointed at the statement. Read the last paragraph. At least read what happens if this continues. I looked down. The last paragraph warned that public division could endanger jobs, the farm's loan, and the Mercer legacy. It asked the community to reject blame and support a family solution. There was no promise to correct the record, no admission about the East Field, no apology to Maya, no mention of the altered log. I tore the pages once through the middle. The sound was not loud. It still felt like the first honest noise the paper had made. Dad stood. What are you doing? What I should have done when you filed the complaint. I placed my own signed statement in front of Aaron. Attached to it was written permission for the county, my employer, and the milk buyer to use my warning email and the tractor messages in their reviews. I had removed the last private shield around the evidence. I am correcting the public record, I said. I will answer questions about my delay. I will not accept responsibility for the spreading, the false log, or your statements about the sample. Dad's voice dropped. You will destroy me. No, I am refusing to be the material you use to rebuild your reputation. He looked toward Luke. Tell her. Luke shook his head. Dad looked toward Maya. She held Rose closer. Finally, he looked at Aaron. Is this what you wanted? Aaron's expression did not change. I wanted accurate records and safe water. The room was silent again. Dad sat down slowly. For most of my life, his authority had filled every room before he entered it. Now he was one man at a folding table with torn pages in front of him. I slid a blank sheet from my folder and placed it beside his hand. If you still want to apologize, I said, use your own words. He did not move. The meeting coordinator asked whether he needed a recess. Dad said no. He pulled the microphone closer. My name is Wade Mercer, he began. His voice shook on his own name. I made the decision to use the East Field. I had been warned about the rain and the drainage. I changed the log after the well report came back. My daughter did not collect that sample, and I was wrong to say she did. He stopped. Nobody rescued him. He looked at Maya. I am sorry your water became unsafe while I was trying to protect my farm. I am sorry I called what your family has lived through an inconvenience. Dad turned toward me. I am sorry I used your work against you. I believed he regretted the result. I did not yet know whether he understood the choice. Thank you for correcting it, I said. That was all I could honestly give him. Aaron then read the immediate terms of the corrective order. Mercer Ridge would continue providing water. The East 40 would remain closed to manure application. The farm would expand storage before the next wet season and fund a replacement well if the final well assessment supported it. The milk buyer's representative confirmed that pickups would continue as long as the farm met those terms and kept accurate records. The farm was not destroyed. Dad's story about why he had to lie was. As the meeting ended, he gathered the torn halves of his statement. He did not ask me to fix them. I put the red lab report back in my canvas bag. For the first time since Maya called, it felt less like an accusation and more like a boundary. The consequences came in ordinary pieces. My firm closed Dad's complaint. The final letter said there was no evidence of sampling misconduct or false scientific claims. It also noted my delayed disclosure, and I completed the ethics review I had agreed to. I kept my license and my job. I also stopped giving free professional advice to relatives. That boundary sounded cold to Dad. To me, it sounded like a door with a handle on both sides. Mercer Ridge installed additional storage before winter. The cost was painful, but it was less than Dad had claimed an honest response would cost. The bank extended the loan after Luke returned under a written operating agreement. Luke did not become Dad's boss. Dad did not become easy. They divided authority, hired an outside planner, and kept application records in a system neither of them could quietly rewrite. Maya's family received a replacement well drilled to a safer depth. Until it was finished, the farm paid for water deliveries without adding a sentence about admission. The first test from the new well came back within the drinking water standard. Maya sent me a copy with one word written in green ink. Safe. I placed it behind the original red report in the same clear sleeve. I did not keep the first page to punish Dad. I kept both pages because recovery should never erase the reason it was needed. Dad and I did not return to normal. Normal had depended on me accepting the role of family expert whenever he wanted help and family daughter whenever he wanted silence. For several months, we spoke only about practical things: his blood pressure appointment, Luke's daughter's school play, the maple tree by the milk house, which finally had to come down. Then, one cold morning, Dad came to Madison for coffee. He did not ask me to review a map. He did not mention the bank. He sat across from me and said, "I thought admitting one mistake would erase everything I had done right." I waited. "It did not," he continued. "Lying almost did." That was not a perfect apology. It was better than the one his lawyer wrote because it belonged to him. "I thought telling the truth would mean choosing against you," I said. "It did not. It meant refusing to disappear inside your decision." He nodded. "We are still working out what family looks like without hidden invoices. Some weeks, Dad listens. Some weeks, he becomes defensive and I end the call. Luke no longer asks me to translate between them. Maya does not invite Dad into her home. She waves when she sees him on the road. That is the boundary she chose, and nobody has the right to grade it. Rose is walking now. The last time I visited, she slapped both hands against the kitchen faucet while Maya filled a glass. Maya drank the water without smelling it first. That small act was the closest thing to victory I had seen. People often imagine family loyalty as standing beside someone no matter what they do. I used to imagine it that way too. But standing beside someone is not the same as standing in front of the harm they caused. My father asked me to carry his contamination because he believed the farm was too important to face the truth. What saved the farm was the truth arriving before the next storm. The red report still sits in my file cabinet. The safe report is directly behind it. Same well, same family, different choices. Would you have read the statement to protect the farm or torn it in half? Tell me where you believe gratitude ends and responsibility begins.